So this is part 3 of Chapter 11's lecture on cell communication, and we left off talking about second messengers versus relay molecules. So again, relay molecules are going to be proteins that are involved in passing the signal within the cell to get the response. And then the second messengers are also going to be transferring or involved in the passing of the signal to the target where response is needed, but they are non-protein. So again, the classic examples and the very commonly used second messengers in the cell are cyclic AMP or CAMP and calcium. So those two are heavily involved. And we're going to take a look at a G protein receptor and its transduction pathway in a short video that will actually, I think this is the one that is using cyclic AMP. So cyclic AMP is used a lot, especially with hormones. So when a hormone is the ligand or the signal molecule, oftentimes cyclic AMP is going to be involved. So the next slide actually is showing you the G protein receptor. In this case, it's a neurotransmitter that's actually binding and passing the signal along. And again, here is that G protein with its 3 subunits. And again, these dissociate once this protein that's transmembrane, this is our receptor protein, our G protein receptor, changes. It goes through a conformational change when the neurotransmitter binds to it here. And then what this is doing is activating inside the cell a signal transduction pathway and ultimately a cellular response. So step 3 in our signal transduction pathway is the response of the cell. So step 1, signal, step 2, transduction, step 3, cell response. So the cell response is something that's going to be done by the cell once it receives the signal. So it can lead to the regulation of one or more cellular activities. For example, the activity of an enzyme within the cell. We've already seen how relay molecules can have that effect. Or it can actually stimulate the synthesis of an enzyme. So the synthesis of an enzyme is going to mean that we need transcription of DNA to occur. So a lot of cell communication is actually signal molecules that are initiating the transcription of DNA so that certain proteins will be made by the cell. So in that case, the response is going to involve action that begins in the nucleus and then maybe results in a final protein production in the cytoplasm. So again, many signaling pathways are ultimately regulating protein synthesis by turning certain genes on or off in the nucleus. So now I'm going to see if this video will play for you. I'm just giving an example of this G protein signal transduction, and we'll end with that. That'll be the end of chapter 11. So one of the things that I like about this animation is that it's showing you how a hormone works with signal transduction. So in this case, they're using epinephrine, which is a hormone that's also known as adrenaline, that works differently on different cells. So wherever its target cell is, which is very common with hormones, that they travel throughout the body and they're going to get a different response depending on the cell that they actually are stimulating. So in the case of epinephrine that you're going to see, it's going to have a specific response that varies according to the cell type that it's being received by. So I know that was a lot of words that you're not going to be needing to know, a lot of those steps. But what's emphasized there that's really important is that there are multiple steps. And so that relaying of the signal throughout the cell is really what I wanted you to focus on there. And to see that there was the signal, then there was the transduction that involved a second messenger, which was the cyclic AMP. It also involved different enzymes that were relay molecules that took the message into the nucleus in order to stimulate the production of a protein that happened to be another enzyme. And then the end result, as you know, adrenaline is part of that fight or flight response. So epinephrine is trying to get the body ready for fight or flight. And so for that to happen, it needs glucose. And so that through this epinephrine reaction and signal, and not reaction, but actually signal transduction pathway, the cell is able to actually make a protein that will allow there to be more glucose released into the bloodstream. So you can see again, this is such an example of how complicated but how beautifully coordinated the processes are in the different parts of the body, even as far as doing this long distance signaling that we see with a hormone. You can see that there's a very specific response that occurs that has a very specific function. So that's it for Chapter 11. Hope that helped clear up some misconceptions or maybe questions that you had. Make sure you bring questions to class if you have any still left over.